Hello, BookTube. I've once again been honored to be tagged in one of Josh's epic food tags over at Literary Gladiators. This one is the soup tag, and I thought we'd get right to it right now. The first category is chicken noodle, a family favorite, meaning in this case a book that is a family favorite. And Josh tells stories about books passing from hand to hand among half a dozen relatives, and I envy that. I have nothing like that. I'm afraid the first category for me is a complete dud. Number two, tomato, cozy read. And for this, there are a bunch of candidates. Ellen Hildebrandt, Debbie Macomber. There are all sorts of authors, a whole bunch of murder mystery authors whose subgenre is actually called cozy. The whole idea being a nice circumscribed world with small tempest in a teapot problems that get resolved. And I read quite a few books like that. I'm not always in the mood for them, but when I do, there's a lot of talented candidates to go to. Number three, Pasta Fagioli, an anthology with great writers. Now, this I have something in mind that might actually be in your basement or in your garage from your days at school. It's the Norton Anthology of English Literature in 2 volumes. But it's not just any Norton anthology. It's the 5th edition. All the editions before that are a little too Victorian, and all the editions after that are a little too postmodern. The 5th edition brought together a titanic assemblage of editors, and they did a great job with the things that they decided to include, and the additions of those things they decided to include. The 5th edition of the Norton Anthology of English Literature is actually a 2-volume set worth having and constantly consulting. Number 4, Minestrone. 5 poems you'd like to put in your own anthology. This, of course, is great to think about. It reminds me that we really need, from the guys at Strip Cover Lit, a poetry tag. Poetry 103 tag, a 3rd poetry tag. I love doing the first one. My second one was too long, and I hadn't yet learned how to make long videos, so I'm ready for a 3rd one. But coming up with 5 poems to go in an anthology is really tough. And Josh unintentionally took a little of the burden off my shoulders, because one of the poems he picked, I would actually pick. It's The Starry Night by Anne Sexton. He listed it, and I would too, absolutely. But also One Art by Elizabeth Bishop, an absolutely bleak poem that's just brilliant. Ulysses by Tennyson, which is something I've praised on this channel before. Frank O'Hara's Having a Coke with You, which is resolutely doesn't take itself too seriously. And Christina Rossetti's Uphill, which I consider to be one of the greatest poems about Christianity ever written. Oh no, I could go on forever. On that one, I could go on forever. Number 5, Egg Drop, a work that is frequently misunderstood. This is actually something I mentioned before on this channel, a work that is, I think, the most misunderstood work in the Western canon, and that is The Prince by Machiavelli, which has been twisted and contorted by every single skimmer since it was first circulating in manuscript. A clear-eyed, sensible, sit-down reading of the thing only takes about an hour, and you come away clearly knowing what the author is intending, and it's not how to stab your enemies in the back. Anyway, number 6, Fisherman's. What work gave you a burning sensation while you read it? Not 100% sure that was the best phrasing, but if it refers to outrage, then I have quite a few candidates, and the theme that tends to link my candidates for outrage are nonfiction works about institutionalized cruelty. Those tend to get me going more than a single crime or anything like that. And for that, I have 2 candidates here. The first one is Robert Ferguson's Inferno, which is his book about the American prison system that will just twist you up in knots. And the second is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, which is a full-blown Technicolor horror story and is meant to be one. Number 7, Gumbo, a work that makes you think of a party or large gathering. Now, every time I recommend this work, some of you, one or two of you, are bound to pipe up and say, "Oh no, I read that and hated it." And I didn't want to hear that. It's the Decameron by Boccaccio. And if you haven't read it, you should. And if you think you have, you haven't. If you read it, if you think you read the Decameron by Boccaccio, but your reaction when I say that is that you didn't like it, then you didn't read it. Because it's one of those books, one of those tiny handful of books where if you actually read it, you can't dislike it. And it's a gathering of young people. It's a gathering of sexy young people that decide to avoid the plague by going out into the country and telling stories. And I just love it. I just love it. I've read it many, many, many times. I travel all over the world with the Penguin paperback, and I've read every English translation that there is, and just God's plenty is how a very wise man described it. Number 8, wedding, a favorite literary marriage. Now, this is something that I've mentioned on this channel before. I'm going to mention it again because it occurs to me every once in a while to keep in mind that I can't expect all of you to have memorized every last detail of 300 videos. So I will occasionally repeat myself. And the one I have in mind here, the one that always comes to mind first for literary marriages, is from the Palliser novels of Anthony Trollope. And it's the central marriage of Plantagenet Palliser, who is a stick in the mud, an unimaginative, boring drip, and Lady Glencora, his wife, who is anything but. She is glorious, contradictory, impulsive, but glorious. We first really meet her during an incredibly breathless melodrama about the lost love of her life. A man named Burgo. her wealthy family and Plantagenet Palliser's wealthy family are angling towards their marriage, but for ridiculous scene after ridiculous scene in one particular book, Lady Glen is just moonstruck over this feckless idiot. And then we see her in her glory in the novel The Prime Minister, where she rules English society and wants to make a big deal out of it. And it's that, of course, that kind of attention grabbing is exactly opposite to her husband. And there are some amazing scenes, some amazingly well done scenes, especially when you consider that despite the fact that he had the personality of a brontosaurus, Anthony Trollope was actually happily married. And to a woman who was pretty much exactly his equal. Where he drew the inspiration for the Palliser scenes, especially their confrontation scenes, I just don't know. It makes them all the more miraculous to me. And then, of course, there's the novel The Duke's Children, the final novel in the Palliser series, which starts off with, I wish I had the line by memory, but it starts off, the very first line is, "There can have been no more lonely man in all of England than our friend the Duke when the Duchess was dead." She doesn't die in the book. She dies in between books. We start The Duke's Children with her dead. A character... Oh, God. Sorry. She's making lots of appearances in these videos. Anyway, that's my candidate for favorite literary marriage. And if you haven't read Trollope, we should have a talk, because you're missing out on somebody who's a bit of an acquired taste, but ever so much fun. Oh my God. The reading and rereading of his books will be standby, enjoyable entertainment for you for the rest of your life. But anyway, let's see here. Vegetable is the next one. What do you read to exercise your brain? Not really sure about this one. My initial unhelpful answer would be that I read everything to exercise my brain, but I think I know what the question is really getting at. And for me, it would right now it's quantum mechanics. It's quantum physics. I'm amassing books. I'm reading them. I'm trying to understand at least a little bit about quantum physics. Haven't succeeded in any way. Have completely failed. But that I find really works the brain, because it's just incomprehensible to me. And I'm not consoled by the fact that it seems to be incomprehensible to everybody. It still bugs me. Let's see here. Number 10. P-H-O? Pho? A book you would take to the streets to promote. This also changes all the time because for me, the last book I read that surprised and utterly delighted me is the one that I want everyone to read. I have learned to control that reaction because not everybody reads as much as I do, and not everybody wants to take recommendations, and that kind of grab you by the lapels enthusiasm can get a little tiresome for most people. Not for me. I love it. When somebody's moved like that by a book, I want to know about it. Even if I don't end up liking the book, I still want to know about it. Like for instance, right now, my answer to this would be a book we've seen on this channel, The Red Sphinx by Alexander Dumas, that Pegasus Books put out a new translation, a big, beautiful new translation of it. And oh my God, what a book! It's so much fun. It doesn't let up at all. It's just absolutely enjoyable from start to finish. I have a review of it coming out in the Christian Science Monitor at a bit of length. I wanted to go on forever, but that'd be it for now. Tech in 2 days, I would have a different answer. Number 11, Duck, an absurdist gem. Now I don't know about technical, official absurdism, but as far as an absurd novel goes, I have one in mind. It's Keeping Bedlam at Bay in the Prague Cafe by M. Henderson Ellis. It's about the main character who is he's briefly an employee at an impersonal cafe chain, but he's a little weird, and the cafe chain eventually decides they don't really want him as an employee, and he just can't accept that. Not angrily, he just doesn't believe it. It's high-mannered comedy like this book is very hard to do at all, much less to sustain for 200 pages, and this author does it perfectly, so I highly recommend the book. If you want to laugh, I highly recommend the book. Number 12, Soup Kitchen. What is your favorite soup? Well, we were going to get to this sooner or later, weren't we? In a tag like this. I don't really know how to answer this question. I was socialized, including eating, by a species that isn't human, by dogs. And just as an experiment, if you happen to have a dog, try feeding them soup and see what happens. You can't drink it, and you can't eat it. I don't understand. I was taught from my earliest childhood that food is something that you bolt until there's no more of it left anywhere inside. You don't really care what it tastes like. You don't really need variety, and it has to be one thing or another. It can't be chewing gum. Only humans would invent chewing gum. It can't be pie or soup where there's solid suspended in liquid. That makes no sense. That's madness. I guess maybe it would be chicken noodle soup because you can't go wrong with that, but I find soup very disconcerting. So I tend not to eat it. I mean, even if eat is the right word. Do you drink soup? I don't know. Oh my God. All right. Someday, when we have a massive booktuber hangout in person, you'll come face to face with some of these limitations. If we're all at a restaurant, you can dare me and I'll order spaghetti. And you'll see the whole horrible truth of what I'm saying. But in the meantime, I don't really have a favorite soup. Number 13, all you can eat special. Who do you tag? I have a whole bunch of people I want to tag. Sue's Book Nook. I want to tag Britta, because I'm assuming they have soup in Europe. Insert literary pun here. I want to tag her, and Janet, Reading with Pugs, and Elisa at Paper Bits. But really, the glory of Josh's food tags is the communal aspect. So by all means, consider yourself tagged if you've ever had some sort of positive experience with soup. I can't say as I have, but this was an enormous fun. So thank you very much for tagging me, and I'll see you soon, BookTube.